Okay, folks, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Jason Karlawish is a professor of medicine, medical ethics, and health policy at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Karlawish's research focuses on neuroethics, particularly in research and care of older adults and persons with late-life cognitive disorders. Dr. Karlawish is going to give a talk entitled, If I Had Alzheimer's Disease, Searching for Humanity, Settling for Less. Please help me welcome Dr. Karlawish.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Many thanks to Jeff Dower and Carl Craver for organizing this conference. And I want to give special thanks in particular to Richard Rubin for reaching out to me almost a year ago this month when I was in St. Louis to give a talk. And he and I met, and Richard had the courage to ask me to dinner, and we had dinner, and the rest is, well, history, I suppose, with a present. I am a physician, and every Wednesday I see patients at the Penn Memory Center, where I diagnose and treat adults with late-life cognitive impairment caused by neurodegenerative diseases, most commonly Alzheimer's disease, particularly. In one of my first substantive memories of a person with advanced dementia, I'm standing at the threshold of a room in the nursing home where my great-grandmother lay. I don't want to say she lived there because in the weeks and months after she fell from the step that led up to the altar at St. Mary's Church in Branford, Connecticut, they moved her all around, from one to another of all kinds of rehabilitation and care homes. And this one, the place I sort of remember as the first nursing home I'd been to, it wasn't the last one she lived in before she died. She had many years to live before she finally died. It was a Saturday afternoon in Connecticut. I was 8 years old. I was standing at the threshold looking down the hallway. It was long, like the hallways at Dater's school, my grammar school, but unlike Dater, where the wooden floors were polished to a rich caramel, this floor was a dull gray and white linoleum squares. It led to another hall, and along all these halls were regularly spaced doors that led to old people's rooms. The ceiling was low. An old man was moving away from me. He wore a white collared shirt, short-sleeved, and dark trousers, and these clothes hung from him in that loose and baggy way that the old men who visited my grandparents' house wore their shirts and pants. He didn't so much walk as shuffle, and the grit beneath the shoes made a sound. I can still feel that sound. His arms dangled stiffly at his sides. Something falls out of the leg of his pants where the cuff meets the shoe, and that thing rolls a few inches from his feet, and then again, and yet again, like when pennies or candy slip from the hole in your pants pocket. But these aren't pennies or candy. And he just keeps walking. He doesn't care. He doesn't stop until a nurse comes out of one of the rooms. She calls his names and makes the sort of noises a mother says to her little kid who's in distress. She's a towel of some sort. She bends down and uses that to clean up the mess he's made. He says nothing. I step back into the room, disgusted. This April, the New England Journal of Medicine published a research report, Death with Dignity at a Seattle Cancer Center. A few weeks ago, I read that report at my office desk at the Alzheimer's Disease Center at the University of Pennsylvania, and I've been turning it over in my head ever since. It reports the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center's 3-year experience with patients exercising the Washington State Death with Dignity Act. That act allows a terminally ill patient to end his or her life by taking a lethal dose of Seconal. Key components of the act include a patient has a terminal disease, the patient is competent to request a lethal prescription, and the request is voluntary. The researchers report on the demographic characteristics of the 36 patients who requested a prescription, and they surveyed them to learn the reasons why they requested a prescription. 55% were male, nearly all of them were white, most had at least a college education. The authors report, quote, the most common reason for participation was loss of autonomy, 97%, inability to engage in enjoyable activities, 88%, and loss of dignity, 75%. Notably, loss of control over bodily functions was cited by little more than 1/4 of the participants. Loss of dignity. This phrase makes dignity seem like something we own, a possession, like our keys or wallet or eyeglasses, something we can lose, and if we search hard enough and remember the steps right up until when we last saw it, we might recover it and get on with our dignified lives. And if we can't find it, and we are terminally ill, we'll end our own life. Or is it something else? Some 16 or 17 years after that Saturday afternoon in the nursing home in Connecticut, I was a third-year medical student in Chicago doing my internal medicine clerkship. One of our assignments was to present a case. A case meant a patient who had a good story, and a good story meant an exciting beginning with a rapidly unfolding plot leading up to a diagnosis and perhaps as well with a denouement of response to a course of therapy. The best cases started with a previously healthy adult. That simple phrase, previously healthy, consistently kindles a frisson of foreboding. Something bad, something really bad is about to happen. And we compose these cases to swiftly stir up the drama. By the close of the first sentence, we wanted our audience of fellow students and an attending eager to hear more. And if you were really good, you could foreshadow the whole story, the ending, in just one sentence at the beginning. A previously healthy 52-year-old woman presents with 7 days of intermittent hematuria, 2 weeks of low back pain, and a 10-pound unintentional weight loss. We worked hard to tell the story with just the right amount of detail, the pertinent points only on history. The hematuria is painless, denies flank pain, no recent history of dehydration or exercise. We had to present a thorough physical exam, but we knew to highlight essential facts relevant to the drama. No inguinal or supraclavicular adenopathy. We were trained to be skeptical of labs, not to dump data, but instead to compose it like notes of music. Sometimes the attending would even signal us to stop before the labs and ask the assembled listeners to guess the results. Because if we were really good historians, the labs should be evident. Urinalysis shows no bacteria, many red blood cells, few white blood cells, no crystals, culture negative. Why, the attending interrupts me, did you obtain a culture if the urine showed no bacteria? He's right, of course, the culture is unnecessary. I bow my head and I evoke the passive actors in our lives. It was ordered. By the last chapters of the story, the suspects are lined up in a differential diagnosis and picked off one by one so the conclusion is palpable. If this were a book, you'd be reading so fast to get to the end, you'd be scanning the paragraphs, flipping ahead to see how many pages remain, because that was itself a clue whether this was in fact the ending or seeing several chapters actually remain, just another twist in the plot. To add to the drama of these stories, we would stand around the patient's bedside as the student read the story, sometimes pausing to examine for ourselves the key physical findings. We hunted for good cases on the wards. To find these crystals, we had to sort through a census of rocks. A straightforward pneumonia, yet another chest pain rule at MI, a lunger with a cough, and shortness of breath. You knew you told a good bestseller when at the end a colleague remarked, "Great case." There came a week when one medical student, I'll call her Sarah, I don't remember her name, was to present a case to the attending. She was a bright young woman from a prestigious college in Boston. She worked hard on her assignments, but it was known that she wanted to go into ophthalmology. This meant, of course, that she needed the best of grades, and an honors in internal medicine clerkship would be essential. Her case, she explained, was up on the hospital's top floor in the remodeled ward that featured not semi-private rooms, but truly private rooms. Large rooms with TVs, dark wooden furniture and cabinets, beds with rose-colored quilts and artwork that evoked European estates and country scenes. They served the food on china plates with metal utensils, not real silver, but good enough to call silverware. The views from the tower were city-wide, and in some premium rooms captured the vast waters of Lake Michigan. We entered the room. An elderly white woman lay awake in the bed. The quilt was smoothed out and tucked up to just below her chin, so that her head was almost disembodied. Her hair was as white and stiff as marble. Her lips were painted red. If she smiled, it was hardly noticeable. She did not speak. She never spoke. I don't recall how Sarah opened the case. I do not recall what exactly the story was about. She told us the old woman lived in a nearby apartment and for the last few years had needed help to live there. Someone had to dress her. In the past few days, she had been more and more confused and disruptive. She had hit at people. Sarah said the patient herself had no complaints. Sarah then recited a litany of pertinent negatives and on a review of symptoms. Her physical was also unremarkable, so too her labs. And so today, the old woman, who could not remain calm in her lakeshore apartment, now lay calm in her bed high in the hospital tower. It was like we'd walked into her bedroom at home. Beside her bed, a black woman sat in a chair. She was dressed in a kind of nursing costume. Sarah gestured to her and explained how she lived with the old woman. The old woman smiled at Sarah. Sarah explained how the woman helped the old woman get dressed and made her meals. Once the old woman spoke words that made no sense, and Sarah paused her story to ask her what she wanted, but the old woman could not tell us what she wanted, and Sarah tilted her head and smiled and patted the woman's hand beneath the rose-colored quilt and called her sweetie, or something like that, and said to her that everything was okay. Honestly, the case sucked. There was no drama, no mystery, no physical exam findings. There was no diagnosis. We didn't touch her. We didn't talk to her. We just looked at each other and at the ancient old woman whose idle gaze looked to no one and to nothing in particular. When Sarah finished her presentation, we couldn't wait to leave. The attending made a few remarks about how we see this kind of patient and the problems she had were difficult to manage, and a few other things that filled the time long enough that leaving was not rude. Why did Sarah do this? What was to be gained from this? We were bored, uninterested. We were disgusted. The incontinent man shuffling down the hallway of his nursing home, emptying his bowels. The mute woman who struck at the hired woman who bathed and dressed and fed her. If something's disgusting, we won't grant them dignity. If we're going to find humanity in advanced dementia, I believe we're going to have to confront our feelings of disgust and our failure to bestow dignity to the patients. I picked this word bestow because it evokes the idea of presenting a gift, to provide quarters or lodging. That's what bestow means. Those men in Seattle dying of cancer who checked the survey question that among their reasons for taking a lethal dose of Seconal was a loss of dignity were in a sense telling us about a feeling of a loss of humanity. Years ago, when I was a fellow in geriatric medicine, I read the philosopher George H.'s book, Autonomy in Long-Term Care. It's a very well-written, thoughtful effort to make sense of autonomy amongst a group of people who almost by definition don't have autonomy. They're dependent on others for their basic daily life. They live in a total institution. The book includes careful philosophic work that clarifies the meanings of terms and distinguishes among kinds and concepts. George also gathered data using interviews with and observations of nursing home residents and staff. And there's a line in that book that has never left me, and I've been turning it over ever since. It's a piece of data he reports, a quote from a nurse's aide, which is an hourly paid worker who has hourly charge of the physical care of a resident. Not all poop smells the same, she said. I think that anyone who's ever been a parent to an infant or been with a parent as he or she does the work of parenting an infant knows what I'm saying. I'm always struck at how a parent will hoist their infant aloft by the shoulders and swing the child's diapered bottom close to their nose to determine whether a change is needed. They do this deliberately, they do this casually and without shame. They do it without disgust. When the nurse stooped to help the old man in the hallway in the nursing home, I wonder if she felt disgust. The bond between a parent and their child, the bond between some nurses and some nurses' aides and some of their patients, clients, charges, I'm not sure of the word, but whatever it is the word, it matters a lot. This is the kind of bond that makes not all poop smell the same. When I was a fellow in geriatric medicine, I had charge of the care of a group of nursing home residents. The nursing home was part of a continuing care high-rise building. Above the lobby level were 2 floors, one a nursing unit for patients on either short stay or long-term residence, and the other was the special care unit, a locked ward for residents with advanced dementia. One day, while seeing patients in the special care unit, I asked myself about one of the patients, Mr. Edwards. Why does he have a beard? He's one of the residents there, and one of the more active residents. He passes his days shuffling from one end to the other of the long hallway. Stands at the nurse's station and stares at the front page of the newspaper, or a flower, or a clipboard. He's tall, so thin that his belted pants gather about his waist like a curtain along a rod. His hair is pure white, and his thin chin and cheeks are covered by a well-groomed white beard, snow-white beard. Of all the men on that floor, he's the only one with a beard. Why, I wondered, did he wear one? The beard is not a sign of neglect. It's thick and full, not tangled or dirty. It's well groomed. I wondered, did he grow it after he arrived at the special care unit or before? And whether before or after, someone, not he, has chosen to maintain this beard. His dementia has advanced to the stage that he's dependent and needs maximal assists in all of his basic activities of daily living, except for transferring. Someone must dress, bathe, and clothe him. When he needs to toilet, he often chooses a spot on the floor proximate to where, at that moment, he stands. Although once upon a time he may have grown that beard by his own agency, now someone else has charge of it. Who and why is the mystery. Dr. C cares for him, but she is on maternity leave, and in her absence, I am his physician. Several days ago, another resident pushed him to the ground. He hit the floor, and he yelled, and for several minutes he appeared to be in great pain at his right hip. Then he started to walk again. Same slow shuffle as before the fall. I ordered x-rays, and they demonstrated no fracture. I telephoned Mr. Edwards' wife on the pretext of reporting the results of the x-rays. The news is old. She visits him every day. She already knows about the fall and the x-ray results. I talk about his health until I feel the courage to ask her the question I really want to ask. I was wondering why he has the beard. There's no problem with it. It's just that he's the only resident with one. She repeats the question, why does he have a beard? I guess it's because he does. Because I take care of it. He had a beard since about, we married in 1973, and so I'd say he grew the beard in 75 or so. He's had it since then. So since before he came to Montgomery Place. Right. He's been there for about 2 years now. I care for him at home for about 5, and then, it got to be too much. She laughs. You can imagine that. So I moved him in there. I see. But I take care of the beard. I'll tell you a story. When he first got there, they sent him down to the barber for a haircut and to groom his beard. And I got a call from the barber saying that the next time he came, I would absolutely have to accompany him. And do you know why? No. Why? Because he started to take his clothes off. She laughs. Right there in the chair, he started undressing. And I think to myself now in reflection, how disgusting, how undignified. Well, anyway, she says to me, I said none of that, so I went out and bought a set of proper shears and scissors and such, and I started to take care of his beard myself. Every few days I tend to it. He rather likes it when I do. He lets me do it, and he seems to enjoy it. He doesn't know my name, but he does recognize me as someone who is good. When I show up, he smiles, and we sit in his room. I take care of his beard there. I think he looks rather handsome with it. He always did. Besides, he's gotten so thin. Even though he eats, he's gotten so very thin. And I think the beard helps to cover how thin his cheeks are. I agree, I tell her. He does look handsome with it. Distinguished. Well, you know why he grew it? He used to do real estate in Hyde Park. And there are lots of his clients were professors. University there, of course. And back in the 70s, beards were popular. So he grew one. Sometimes he wears a tweed coat with patches on the elbows, and I'll tease him, oh, okay, you're dressed up like a professor today. I laugh, oh, it's the look. That's right, she says, it is. I thank her for telling me this story. Since I met him, I explained to her, I've been wondering where the beard came from. I knew someone was behind it, so to speak, and it's you. And what a marvelous story. You're taking such good care of him and his beard. She thanks me, and then we hang up. This past Wednesday, while seeing patients at the Penn Memory Center, I told the wife of one patient about this weekend's conference here in St. Louis, Finding Humanity in Advanced Dementia. Her husband has had Alzheimer's disease for about 8 years. He lives at home with her. Every morning, someone comes to bathe him and dress him and help him to the toilet. He needs a diaper, but he won't wear it. If he's outdoors, he'll relieve himself there. She has to cut his food. He can speak a sentence or two, but he can't converse. At night, they watch Gunsmoke on TV. This summer, she'll sell the house they've lived in for decades, move by herself to a smaller one, and she will move him to a special care unit. I told her about my talk and how I was going to talk about disgust and dignity, and how they might be the ways that we negotiate our way to find humanity in advanced dementia. She disagreed with me. She doesn't feel disgust for her husband. She told me how she feels a sadness and mourns his loss. Their loss. The loss of this part of her. Of course she does not feel disgust for him. Of course. That's why she bestows him dignity. And that, I think, is why she is open to feeling sadness for him and to mourn him and to care for him, even after he does not live with her, like the wife who groomed her husband's beard in the special care unit. And so I guess let me just wrap up with this point. I'm not a religious man, and it has been years since I attended a church service, so I hope you appreciate the conviction I have when I tell you that I think that it's out of our suffering that we find humanity in advanced dementia. Thank you for the opportunity to make these brief remarks, and I guess I'll take questions or something now.